with leg locks, man, I know, to me at least, from what I've seen in like the mass media and stuff, it seems like they're the ones that popularized it, right? Like almost, and then Dean Lister, I think, and then but then when I saw you, when I was doing research on you, you were doing it for the end of time. Like you've been doing it for a long time, and even with that Fred Jones, then you know what I mean. That was like 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. Or something.
No, actually, like Craig's match was in 5 years ago. It was 2000.
Oh, it's 5 years. Okay, yeah.
So I literally started. Well, I started doing leg locks when I moved to the States. That was in 2004.
Yeah.
But in competition, I started to get results when I was in 2005 as a brown belt. So my first like tournament that I really did a lot of leg locks was a Brazilian Nationals in 2005 as a brown belt, and then a Worlds, like half of my match leg lock wins, including the final for my weight class. And then my first ever match in ADCC, it was a heel hook. I actually happen to have the most heel hook like wins in ADCC in my weight class as far as the heavy guys. And I'm the second most owned behind Dean Lister. And you don't know that, so I played the whole like, oh, leg locks don't work. I'm literally like, I wouldn't call myself a leg lock guy because I chase like whatever submissions available.
Flying triangles.
I happen to have numbers on that puts me as one of the guys that it's been doing like the most, and like
especially when you go ahead and research it, because that seems to be like the headlines, right? When you go on YouTube, it's kind of like, well, they were in this like 50-50, especially with the Craig Jones and Dean Lister one, and and all that stuff. What do you think about coming from Brazil and with your lineage and stuff like that? Is this true? I actually want to know. With the Gracie and all that, do they not approve of that? Like, is it, you know what I mean? It's there's this talk back and forth. I don't know what
it's not that they don't approve. So in the gym, right, they have like I explained earlier, they have this whole side of like self-defense, old school, and then the next thing for them is like IBJJF rule set. So in IBJJF, you cannot do like a toe hold or knee bar until you're a brown belt, black belt, brown belt, right? And then, so basically when you trained based on those rules. So if you're a blue belt, you shouldn't be going for like leg locks. And not just that, the other side of it, it's literally the like, oh, if you go for leg locks, you're not trying to pass the guard. So that means that you don't have technique. And then there's another side, which is like the lineage of like Fada, which is around the Gracies, but they had like pretty much the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and there's the Fada Jiu-Jitsu, right? The Fada guys, they would just like sometimes in competition destroy the Gracie guys based on ankle locks and things like that. So basically it became like a forbidden thing for people that came from their Gracie lineage.
Oh, that's so interesting.
This guy's bit us with that.
Yeah.
So let's not do that. So it was I'll give an example. Like in 2005, when I went back to Brazil to train for Worlds, as a brown belt, I was getting some of the black belts like in kneebars and things like that. And then you could tell that even they're my friends. They're getting frustrated though.
Sure, yeah.
Because first, you're a brown belt.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be getting the black belts. And you're doing things that in our school, it's not as accepted like as in other schools. But it's like, dude, I'm competing for like Worlds. I got to win these matches. And those are moves that I know I can surprise people. So why would I stop practicing them?
It's almost like a different political belief. Like if you're taking the back, I'm not going to get into it, but then it's almost like, wait a minute, man, come on, man. Like
exactly how it feels. It's like, you don't have the right to, it's like,
exactly.
But it's pretty much how it feels. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's weird how people can even buy the whole thing. Oh, you cannot this. What are you talking about, dude? It's like, I'll give an example. Like I always compare that, like Kimuras, people never question like, the legality of going for a Kimura, right? But in my opinion, at least a shoulder injury, it's like, it can be permanent, right? It's one of those things, your shoulder could be always dislocated over like the rest of your life. You're always going to have shoulder pain and things like that. And when it comes down to heel hook, it can be pretty damaging. I'll give an example. Like when I had that match against Craig, like, it didn't do anything to my knee. It broke my fibula, did nothing to my knee, nothing to my soft tissues at all. I used to have like a shoulder injury that happened when I was 16 years old. From falling on my elbow like when I jumped guard. So it's one of those things, that one injury from like when I was a kid, it still bothers me to these days, and that damage against Craig is like gone. It was gone like literally like in 4 months I was competing again.
Yeah. So you think it's like, it's just from them maybe not to figure that out, and then all of a sudden they were getting beat by it, so it was just kind of like, come on, man. Like, it was just out of frustration.
Yeah, just say it's not good. You're not.
Yeah.
If it works, it's good.
Yeah. So what again, obviously 10th Planet is all over the place. You're big. Yeah, you were also at Extreme, but the 10th Planet system. How much of the impact? You come from like the Gracie like lineage, I guess, and then 10th Planet, which had more of an impact on your game, or like the 10th Planet? Can you explain about that system and how it helped you, or which one was better? I don't know, you know?
So there's a whole like funny story about this, because people think that, you know, when I started to first play 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu game, doing rubber guard and things like that.
Yep.
So then start to actually like, you know, go to Eddie and ask for like his, you know, his input onto like some of the moves. So I first started doing rubber guard with Frank Mir on the Ultimate Fighter. That was in 2008.
Yep.
So he's not even a 10th Planet guy, but he was already doing like rubber guard. He was like, you know, doing a lot of stuff like similar to what 10th Planet, like, you know, was working around like way, like back in the day. And then once it starts to feel like, man, I can hit this whole like rubber guard all the time, I'm going to ask for the guy. Now I'm going to ask, you know, help from the guy that actually has a system like, you know, in this area.
Yep.
And that's when I connected with Eddie, and it starts really like getting more involved with 10th Planet system. Out of the blue, that became like a huge part of my game, much more than in jiu-jitsu matches, but even more so like in MMA. If you look at a lot of my fights, I feel just I'm just as much of a danger like, you know, when I'm on my back as I would be on top. And a lot of that comes from like, you know, I have that confidence of playing close guard, which most of the time is off like the rubber guard stuff. And that's when I was like, I gotta get with the guy who actually, you know, has a system behind this.
Especially in MMA, because it's different, right? Like we talked about, it's a different sport, and then you're on your back. That's almost like the last place you want to be. Correct me if I'm wrong, but then on your back. I mean, obviously, if you're not a good jiu-jitsu player, but then
in general,
yeah.
No, it's not just about not being good or not good. I couldn't name multiple names of literal like jiu-jitsu world champions that have a solid career, much better than mine. But you know, when you stand fighter on their back, they're not as good as a black belts as they are when they're on top. Sure. They can show their game like as a, oh yeah, he's a legit grappler. He's a high level black belt. If he gets a takedown, if he's on top, right? Once they go on the back, they're just like another, just average guys. Like even other guys in MMA, they're not even grapplers. And that was one thing. Like for me, it was like the lack of wrestling that maybe didn't allow me to like, you know, go like as far as I could in my career. But when it came down to jiu-jitsu, if you ever fight start on the ground, top or bottom, I feel like I would have probably be like, you know, undefeated for a long time.
You'd be good. Yeah.
There's no such thing out you're on your back. It's like
even with
on the
punches,
ground.
Even with punches.
Even on the punch.
Really?
It doesn't take much damage like on the ground.
Yeah, right.
For either because people didn't even want to engage into my guard game, because I would always be a threat, always threatening with submission. Like I was saying earlier, you know, it's a different approach. When you get into jiu-jitsu, you can just sit like in certain positions for like, you know, a couple of minutes. And MMA, you have to be constantly moving. And that was always my approach in fights. If I was to even jump guard, I would be jumping guard straight into a submission, jumping guard straight to a sweep. So
straight to a triangle.
Yeah, right. Threat. So people are like, dude, it's not even about being on top of this guy. It's about not being on the ground, period. So for the whole thing for me, it's like, as long as I was on the ground, I was just comfortable, top or bottom. There's never like a preference, to be honest. If I was on top, great. That means that I just got the fight to the ground early. I didn't have to like struggle to get it down. But for me, it was always about like being on the ground. And there's no different like mindset or even like physically, there's no difference like at all. Even
when you see the game evolve now, would you think back then it was still kind of the same concepts, or is it like has evolved so much?
I mean, unless it has evolved over the last like 4 years since the last fought.
Right.
I don't think it has evolved that much. Sure. When it comes down to ground game, if anything, I feel like it's just getting worse, because like even in MMA gyms these days, people don't even emphasize the grappling department anymore. It's either striking or wrestling.
Wrestling, you're right.
And that's what it is. So when it comes down, they neglect a lot the ground game. So let's say if you were to put me like today, like now, like if I was younger, they were putting today like in a cage, I feel like I would be just as dominant like on the ground as I was, you know, when I was fighting. Yeah. Like I said, the biggest thing for me was like, you know, the lack of like wrestling. Because if I could mix up a good wrestling and take the fight to the ground, now I would have likely more wins and be like, you know, a much better career with results. But yeah, I don't think it has evolved at all. Like a ground game, I don't think people make that better at shutting things down. Yep. If anything, like I say, it might have got worse because people don't even practice as much.
Interesting. So that's what I was actually going to ask next, is that if you could go back into your prime of your career, what would you change about your game in MMA in particular?
I don't really feel, well, in MMA, of course, I would make a lot of changes. Yeah. I feel like I would change my approach into like how I'm going to take, you know, my path like into getting to become an MMA fighter. First, based on results, and I'm a true believer, you feel like, you know, because it happens, like when you see guys dominating like in the lower belts, blue belts, and they go to purple belt, they're still dominating. Brown belt, they're still dominating. And then they go to black belt and they still win. It's almost like that. That's how it is for most guys. When you look at, you know, Romulo Barral, like when you look at Romulo Barral, like he was that guy, winning blue belt, winning purple belt, winning brown belt, and he ended up like as a 6-time world champion in gi, and ended up winning ADCC, like, you know, as well. So it's one of those things. I would have done exactly what these guys did, like win multiple titles in gi,
Yep.
move to no-gi, collect a couple titles there, and then make the move to MMA to focus on nothing but MMA. The one I would say probably a mistake that I made was to like try to do everything at once, including teaching. And
Oh, interesting. Yep.
I mean, like doing gi jiu-jitsu, no-gi jiu-jitsu, MMA, and I'm teaching. So I was doing so much at once, and it's really hard for you to like reach the highest level. One thing when you have so many things like in your mind, you're basically not really focused, just doing it.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that I started to notice halfway through my MMA career, like through like a few losses. It was that, you know, I was like, dude, I'm doing too much of everything. Just focus on MMA now, which was probably prolonged my athletic career too, because it got to a point that only thing that was motivating me to train was MMA fights.
Sure.
If I didn't have MMA fights, let's say, put him into, I'll have an ADCC coming up. Does Vinny have a fight after ADCC or around ADCC? Because if he does, he's gonna be in shape. If he doesn't have him fight, you know he's gonna show up here like he's trained like as a hobbyist, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's one of the things I would have changed a lot. First, I would have likely worked on collecting more, you know, titles, because I feel like I would be able to. I can name like probably 10 guys that I was being like the lower level belts. I also had wins over them like as black belt, but then they won like 5 titles in gi, and I just like competed once in gi.
Okay.
And then ADCC, there are guys that I can name that never even won ADCC or even placed. And I talk about world champions. And I went there just because I had an MMA fight, I was in shape, and I won ADCC, just, you know, train for a fight.
What's going on, guys? If you're enjoying this podcast, please don't forget to like the videos and subscribe to the channel. Only if you're getting value out of it on YouTube and also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to leave a rating and follow. And also, I also write a blog newsletter from what I learned from my incredible guests that I have on. So sign up for the email list and get updates on the podcast. Thank you for your love and support. Now back to the show.